The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Oh, we had some historic scoring in the NBA last night. But is it something really to celebrate? We'll get into that in just a minute. Randy Mueller, former GM in the NFL. Saints, Dolphins, still studies the game. He says, don't take Drake Maye. Really? Commander's sitting there at number 2. It does appear that Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 to the Bears, or if they trade the pick to somebody else, he's going to be the top pick. But he says, don't take Drake Maye. We'll find out later this hour why he says that. Also, in the next hour, as I continue to roll through these terrific interviews that were done by Joe Buck several years ago, I went through the Joe Namath one, and there's a story in there of how Namath almost wound up at the University of Maryland. How things would have changed if Joe Willie had gone to the University of Maryland instead of Alabama, where he won a national championship. I don't think there was much chance he was going to win a national championship here, but you think about the levels of college football and where Maryland has been and where Alabama is and has always been. Whoa, that's some really stunning stuff, and we'll go through that coming up in the next hour. So I mentioned the historic scoring last night. We had Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers drop 70 points in a win over San Antonio last night, and that breaks Wilt Chamberlain's franchise record. And you say, whoa, wait a minute. Didn't Wilt score 100 points for Philadelphia on March 2nd, 1962 in Hershey, Pennsylvania against the New York Knicks? Yes, he did. But that was for the Philadelphia Warriors. Wilt was drafted by the Warriors when he came out of Kansas, and it was because at that time the NBA had territorial rights. So since Kansas didn't have an NBA team, it reverted to where he went to high school, and Wilt went to Overbrook High School in Philadelphia, and therefore the Philadelphia Warriors held his rights. He moved with the team to San Francisco. I think it was less than a season that he was in San Francisco with the Warriors, and then when the Warriors left, they were replaced by the expansion 76ers. And the 76ers made a trade to get Wilt back to Philadelphia, where he played there, and he won one of his 2 championships during the 1966-67 season. And then Wilt became disenchanted, wanted to be in Los Angeles, where he had a big house, and so they accommodated him under the threat that he would go to the ABA and traded him to the Los Angeles Lakers. But Wilt, his best game, not best game, because I'm going to get to this, whether best game means best scoring game, but his highest scoring game in Philadelphia was 68 points. So Joel Embiid with 70 last night. He also had 18 rebounds and 5 assists, 24 of 41 from the field, 21 of 23 from the free throw line, and had a layup with 1:41 to go, so probably could have added to that, that closed out his scoring. San Antonio had a big night from Victor Wembanyama. We'd normally be talking about this, even though they lost the game. Wembanyama with 33 points and 7 rebounds. I mean, he's on his way to being a star. But what Joel Embiid did last night is indicative of what's happening in the NBA. And ironically, it happens on the 18th anniversary of Kobe Bryant scoring 81 points for the Lakers in a win over Toronto. We talked about that yesterday. That's the second highest scoring performance in NBA history. And it also comes on the same night that Karl Anthony Towns had 62 points for the Minnesota Timberwolves in a home game. And Towns' numbers are impressive. 21 of 35 from the floor, including 10 of 15 from 3. He now has the top 3 scoring games in the history of the Timberwolves. They've been around for 35 years. But here's the thing. Minnesota lost the game. Yeah, they lost the game to the Charlotte Hornets, 128 to 125, and Charlotte at one point was down 18 points. And for all the scoring that Towns did, he only had 4 points in the fourth quarter. He was 2 of 10, and the Timberwolves were outscored 36 to 18. And I think it still works this way. The object is to win the game, not score the most points. Chad Finch is the coach of the Timberwolves. Now, this is a league where you're not supposed to piss off your superstars, but he had enough. And this was Chad Finch after his team lost last night to the Charlotte Hornets on a night that Karl Anthony Towns, a star player, had 62 points.
It was an absolute disgusting performance of defense and immature basketball all the way through the game. So it really didn't slip away. It had been there from the jump. So this is what happens when you have this type of approach.
You know, the approach is, let's get him his points. I mean, the All-Star game, the NBA All-Star game, believe it or not, used to resemble an actual game. It's totally gotten away from the league. There used to be a little bit of defense played. You'd have scores like in the 120s. Now it's like the 180s. It's a joke. No, not that the All-Star game counts, but it does seem to translate over to the real game. Look, Pat Riley built the Knicks on defense. I don't know if you could do that anymore. Used to say about Michael Jordan, you'd want him to take the last shot and defend the last shot. Is there anybody that comes to mind who you'd want to defend the last shot? He's certainly not a scorer. Jordan could do both, but that I guess has left the game. This is more from Finch on what he saw from his team last night as he watched Karl Anthony Towns get 62 points.
Obviously, we're going to try to feed a hot hand, look for a hot hand, but at some point, we got to get back to making the right play. We got to get back to doing the right things. That's just, like I said, there's a lot of ways to be immature. There's always a lot of ways to be immature. And there was a lot of immature performances here throughout the roster. We totally disrespected the game ourselves, and we got exactly what we deserved. So,
Chris, did you also see? I mean, did it turn into Karl trying to hunt like a big number?
Yeah, but for a while, it was going. But down the stretch, we kind of dried up for us. But yeah.
I think I said Chad. That's Chris Finch, the coach of the Timberwolves. So he's got his hands up in the air. Like, I'm trying to coach basketball, and we got a big scoring night going on, and everybody's excited about that. But when Charlotte decided to play a little bit of defense on him, he was 2 of 10 in the fourth quarter, and his team got outscored by 18 points and lost the game by 3. I mean, this is not what you sign up for as a coach. And then you have Greg Popovich. And, yes, he won his game. He lost. He lost his game on a night that they gave up 70 points to Joel Embiid. Popovich is a guy who built his championship teams with the Spurs off fundamentals. He had David Robinson, who was a 4-year player at the Naval Academy, spent 2 years in a service commitment, comes to them, I guess he's 24, maybe even 25 years old. And then, with Tim Duncan coming along, and Duncan was a 4-year player at Wake Forest, who they used to call the big fundamental because he did everything right. He's now coaching, and this sounds like a guy who's signed up to coach in the NBA, and he realized he's got an AAU team here. This is Popovich after his team gave up 70 points in a loss in Philadelphia last night, despite 33 from Victor Wembanyama.
There's more fundamental teaching done now than I had to do when we were a championship caliber team. That was more making decisions during games, calling a certain play, drawing a certain play, making a certain substitution, looking for mismatches. The mechanics of the game of chess while the game is going on, because those guys knew what they were doing, and they were fundamentally sound. These guys are neophytes, and we're not at that stage, so this is more positioning on the court, spatial relationships, man and ball, all the stuff that they would do in college, but they didn't go there. And if they did, they went for a year. So it's a different kind of teaching. The game stuff, I don't get to do quite as often as before.
And he's not looking to walk. He's 75 years old. He's won 5 championships with the Spurs. His legacy is secure. He signed up for 5 more years to coach Victor Wembanyama, but he's also now realizing that it's it's a lot like it was maybe when he was coaching Division III basketball. Like he's teaching the most talented players of the world the basic fundamentals of the game, which they don't learn. And it starts when they're identified as prodigies, when they're like 8, 9 years old. They go through the AAU ranks. Nobody's concerned about defense. They're all talking about how many points these guys score. And then the three-point line has turned this into basically a shootout. The game that I learned to play is so fundamentally different than the game that's played today. It's amazing. We didn't have a three-point shot. The goal for each possession was to get the highest percentage shot you could. And that's even with a shot clock. Once the shot clock came in, okay, sometimes you're forced to hoist up a long shot because the clock's running down. Once the three-point line came in, it was all about setting up players behind the line, taking shots that you thought you could make no matter how far out they were because, 3 points means so much more than 2 points. And so the goal of the game changed so dramatically that it's like this now. And defense, whatever it was, doesn't exist anymore. Is the NBA going to make any big changes? Probably not. The television money is still great. They keep signing these big deals. Attendance is not, like for here, even with the worst defensive team in the league and maybe the second worst, if not the worst team in the league because they've already lost to Detroit once. You're still getting at Capital One Arena, 13,000. It's not a sellout every night, which you would have if you had a championship team, but it's enough. And so, what Adam Silver has done is he's totally turned the league over to the players. And the only thing that's valued is how many points you can score. Is anybody valued for his defense? Not that I know of. So we had this night last night where a player scores 62 in a loss, and another player scores 70 points in a game that was, relatively close. Spurs were in this game in the last 6.5 minutes, they really put on a show last night, both of them. And it's we talked about this when we had George Gervin on a few weeks ago. You may remember this at the end of the 1978 season. In an afternoon game, trying to win the scoring title, David Thompson put up 63 points. And George Gervin, who was playing for San Antonio, was playing a night game that night. And so he knew he needed to have a big night to maintain the scoring title, so he scored 63. And you could say, well, look at those days. You're talking about 45 years ago, 46 years ago, and players were doing that. Yeah, that's true. But there was at least some emphasis on defense. And, David Thompson at that time was the best scorer in the league. He was an unbelievable player in college and then hurt his knee and wasn't the same in the pros. But until he hurt, and that was before he hurt his knee, he could score, and so could Gervin. And that was an unusual situation, and both teams were not in any, playoff chase situation. Heck, we're still in January here. And this is what the league is about now. It's all about the how many points you can put up in a game. Well, okay, good for Embiid, and he's a great player and obviously a great scorer, and he can score 70 points. He's proven that, and probably could have scored more if he wanted to. And Karl Anthony Towns, as great as he was last night, his team lost. His team's not bad either. They're like a 500 team. They're not bad. And I'll tell you this. If Towns can get 62 points in a game against Charlotte, how many do you think he's going to get here tomorrow night against the worst defensive team in the league? Yikes. This is not the game that I grew up loving, watching the Knicks and their five-man weave. I know it sounds ancient history to you, and maybe I'm a dinosaur, but that was basketball. This, I don't really know what this is. This is something different, and you hear the coaches talk about it, and they seem baffled as to exactly what it is. All right, a little news on Ron Rivera. He is going to reportedly interview with the Philadelphia 76ers, Philadelphia Eagles, about becoming their defensive coordinator, which is a job he once had. And if you heard yesterday's show, we played some of the highlights of his interview that he did with John Keim last week about what's next for him and looking back on some of the things that went wrong here. But he was pretty clear about his intentions. Now he's out of a job, but he's pretty clear about what he wants to do going forward.
You still want to coach? Oh yeah, I enjoyed the heck of it. I really do, and that's quite honestly, John. That's what I do. I got away from it for 3.5 seasons, and really felt like I was more of a manager. Things kept coming across. I mean, just stupid stuff at times too would come to me that made no sense that it was being brought to me.
Like what? Anything you can say?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It was just stuff that it shouldn't have been put on the head coach's plate. But at the time when I was dealing with it, I wasn't necessarily the head coach as much as I was, the manager.
What, and as far as coaching continues, like, would you want to only be a head coach? Would you say I'd be open to being a defensive coordinator, coaching in college? What would you have in mind?
I think right now what we've decided is keep all the options open. We've had some conversations with some people and some teams, and we're really just kind of waiting to see what happens after this week. This weekend is where everybody's expecting, the movement to start and begin. And obviously we've taken the approach that we're gonna wait it out. We're gonna listen. I have several opportunities right now. I just want to make sure it's the right one more than it is anything else.
Opportunities in the NFL?
Oh yeah.
Would it be hard to go back and be a DC after being a head coach for so long?
No, not where I am in my career. And I do know this, sometimes you do have to take a step back. I mean, I took a step back from being a coordinator to being a position coach. And 2 years later or 3 years later, I come back and have the number one defense in the league.
Well, this could be a short stay if he takes it, or is offered for to be offered. But if he's offered the Philadelphia job and he takes it, Nick Sirianni's on the hot seat. He can't have a collapse like he had this year. Some of it related to him already firing the defensive coordinator during the season, and that was among the things that went wrong for them. But Ron Rivera has been successful as a defensive coordinator. He proved to be a mediocre coach outside of taking Carolina to the Super Bowl that one year where Cam Newton was the best player in the league. So it's the old Peter principle. You rise to your level of incompetence. And he went from being a good position coach, linebackers, to a good defensive coordinator. As you mentioned, he had the number one defense in the league. That earned him a head coaching job with the Carolina Panthers, where he proved to be in his 9 years there. And then came here for 4 and was not a good coach. More importantly, he was not a good CEO. He said when he came here, that's what was offered. He didn't try and talk Dan Snyder out of it. You notice he didn't say, hey, I don't think this is going to work. We're going to have a structure here. He wanted the whole kit and caboodle. He got it, and he proved to be a poor administrator and a mediocre coach. But he may be a very good defensive coordinator, and there are some guys like that, like Bill Arnsparger. He was the architect of the great Miami defense under Don Shula in the early 70s when they won back-to-back Super Bowls. Got his shot with the Giants as a head coach, was not a good head coach, went back to being a coordinator, and was very good at it. Certain guys are like that. Buddy Ryan was maybe the most revered defensive coordinator of all time. Failed twice. Failed as a head coach in Philadelphia and failed as a head coach in Arizona. So this is sometimes where you're at in life, and that's, you rise to what you're best at, and then somebody puts you above that, and sometimes you can handle it, and sometimes you can't. I don't think Richie Pettibone really got a fair shot here in '93. It was an aging team that was trying to get under the salary cap, and he was one and done. And he was in his mid-50s, and he decided he wasn't going to coach anymore, not as a defensive coordinator, which he had offers to do. As a matter of fact, a couple years later, when the Browns moved to Baltimore and became the Ravens, Ted Marshabrota was the coach. They had fired Bill Belichick after the last game in Cleveland. Marshabrota, who had coached with the Colts, comes in as the head coach of the Ravens, and he wanted Richie as his defensive coordinator. And Richie said, I don't want to do it anymore. He says, it's not the games, it's the preparation. I just don't want to work that hard anymore to prepare for games. But I have no doubt if Richie would have come back as a defensive coordinator, he would have been great. He would have been great at that because he was tremendous here. If they put coordinators in the Hall of Fame, Richie would go in. He was a big part of those 3 Super Bowl championships under Joe Gibbs, but it's just not the way things worked out. So Rivera's a good man, not a good head coach, not a good administrator, but probably a good defensive coordinator and might be just what the Philadelphia Eagles need a guy at 61 years old who still seems to have a lot of fire and would probably welcome the opportunity to play the Commanders twice a year. I think that's something that might interest him. All right, Randy Mueller, former general manager of the New Orleans Saints and the Miami Dolphins under Nick Saban, is now, he does a podcast, he does consulting for teams, and he was guest with John Keim just a day or so ago, and they talked about a number of things, including the hiring of Adam Peters, and most importantly, what they're going to do with the number 2 pick at quarterback. Mueller has no doubt that they're going to use that pick to take a quarterback, but the quarterbacks who are going to be on the board, the one who's considered to be, by many, the second best quarterback in the draft, is not somebody that Mueller would take, and he'll explain why as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We got Mike Callow in for Tony today, and next hour, picked apart the interview. Is that the right term? No, I went through it. I picked out the highlights of the Joe Namath interview that was done with Joe Buck about 6 or 7 years ago, and there's a story in there about how he almost came to the University of Maryland, and of course the story, the guarantee, and the Super Bowl III in 1969. We'll unpack all of that stuff. Meantime, Randy Mueller, who has had a run in the NFL as a general manager and has worked in broadcasting as well, spent some time at ESPN. He's got his own podcast now. He does some scouting for various teams. He's well connected to the whole draft picture and to the picture of running a football team and how to do it correctly. They had good teams when he was in New Orleans with the Saints, and he had 2 years with Nick Saban, and he actually he's talked about his experience with Saban, and even though Saban wasn't successful in his 2 years with the Dolphins, he taught a lot of people about how to run a football team, and his success in college is unquestioned. The great what if on Nick Saban, and it's amazing how history might have played out differently, and he never would have taken his place as the greatest college coach of all time, but might have been in the mix for greatest NFL coach of all time. You just don't know. But when he went from LSU after winning a national championship to the Miami Dolphins, they were interested in looking at Drew Brees after he had been released from the Chargers. Remember, they had drafted Phillip Rivers, and Rivers was going to compete for the job, but it turned out that Brees finally got some traction. You know, he didn't play all that well his first few years in the league. He was a second-round pick, and it wasn't until his 4th or 5th year that he really began to develop. Unfortunately for him, in the last game of the season, he hurt his shoulder, and there was some question whether he was going to be able to even play football again. James Andrews did the surgery and managed to put his shoulder back together, and he went down to Miami for a physical, and they were nervous about it. So the Saints signed him. Had he gone to the Dolphins, Nick Saban would have had his quarterback, and you saw what his good friend Bill Belichick did with a quarterback in Tom Brady. Who knows? You know, maybe the Miami Dolphins are a great team, and he never goes to Alabama. But wasn't working out for him there, wasn't happy, and even though he had denied like a day before, look, I'm not going to the University of Alabama. Well, he went to the University of Alabama, and he won 6 national championships. So it worked out pretty well for him. Anyway, as for Mueller, his take on what the Commanders have been doing and what he makes of the hiring of Adam Peters.
It signaled to me that they weren't sleeping the last 2 months, that they actually had their ducks lined up. They had done a lot of research. The fact that they could pull the trigger that fast told me they did their homework, which is impressive. I think most thought, what are they going to do? There was a lot of questions about the group that Josh has surrounded himself with. Had they done their homework? And this clearly told me that they did. The other thing it tells me is they have a clear vision of the structure that they want, because they added Adam Peters as a GM early enough in the process where he can have some influence on the coaching hire. And so for that reason as well, it's another box that they've checked in an impressive fashion, that they get him on board to now kind of lead the search, not just have input like some of the other teams have done around the league that are looking for coaches without GMs per se.
Right. And, you know, when you as you talked about, like there are a lot of people involved in their process. Did that concern you at some point? Like there were maybe too many people, or what was there a concern with that?
It definitely concerned me. I have always thought this about the Washington market. It is convoluted. It's a busy market. It's a big market. There's a lot of people with, agendas in the area, just from the political standpoint. Let's face it, it is what it is. So I thought that, there was a concern that there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Man, oh man, how is this going to work out? But I think they have to put most of those questions to rest in that they were definitive. They hired, in my opinion, the right guy for the job. And even though he is a first-time GM, and if they end up hiring a first-time coach, I'm not sure he's done, Adam, that is, shaping the front office to where he probably will add some experience in some way, maybe somebody from that's been in the GM chair to add to the mix of first-time GM, first-time coach.
So that's the Randy Mueller take on the GM position, which Adam Peters has. Now the question of the head coach and the question of, with the openings that remain in the NFL, and we'll get to another possible one a little bit later in the show, that, Buffalo, the door is not completely closed on Sean McDermott coming back for another year. But as for this job and the opening here, this is what Randy Mueller says about how attractive it might be.
It should be a great job. It's in a great market. It is a historic franchise. The NFL's better when the Washington football team is at its best. And I think everybody wants that. So I think it's a good job. I think Adam makes it a good job. I think the key for me, if I'm a coach that's considering this, or I'm going to be interviewed there, I want to know, will ownership support the collaborative effort of the GM and the head coach in every way? And if they will, it's a good job. So I think once Adam is able to calm any fears of any candidate on the coaching side, and I think he will because he has that personality, I think then it'll be open and a desirable location for just about any coach.
What would you put as and you've been in that, in the general manager's chair when you're talking to people, what are typically the most important things for a prospective coach when they're looking at an organization?
Well, I think they want to know that they're going to be heard. I want to know their vision and what they want going forward, how they see the team building part of it. I think a coach wants to know that his GM is collaborative and consensus building style. It matches with what his is going to be, and that ownership will spend money, will support ideas, will support the acquisition of talent. I mean, it's clear that this is a great location just from the standpoint of nobody else has $75 million available under the salary cap, for one thing. So the tools for a GM and for a head coach, I think, make it a great job alone. But if ownership is willing to back you, and when I say back you, they have to, and I think this group will, cash over cap even takes and expands that $75 million even further. And there are some NFL franchises that balk a little bit at some of that. But the good ones from a football standpoint, if you can make your choices and decisions clear to ownership, that they say, yep, that makes sense, I'm on board, that's all you can ask from an owner.
The candidates, it seems like the move in the NFL is to hire young offensive minds. But as we go through this, and as things move along, and the times on when you can hire and talk to coaches, it's more traction for defensive guys. And Mike Macdonald's name from the Baltimore Ravens is being thrown around a lot. I mean, he took a team that looked really good offensively the week before against an excellent Cleveland Browns defense. They, never mind the Flacco 2 pick sixes, they scored points against Cleveland with a rookie quarterback. They come into Baltimore, and the Baltimore defense gave up 3 points. Steven Sims had a punt return for a touchdown, so the special teams gave up 1. They gave up 3 points to a team that had rolled it up on Cleveland the week before. So his name is being thrown around. And also, you got to recognize, he took over for Wink Martindale a couple of years ago. And last year, that team, without Lamar Jackson, got into the playoffs because of their defense and almost beat a Joe Burrow quarterback Cincinnati team in the playoffs. They were looking good at that point and just didn't have enough offense to win. So that's a name to keep in mind. And there's reportedly a second interview with Dan Quinn, defensive coordinator of the Cowboys. He's due for an in-person interview on Sunday. It may be just due diligence, and it may be, just because they can't talk to certain candidates like Ben Johnson. The next time they can meet with him is not until Monday, so they're doing what they can while they wait around. But it's interesting that he's still in the mix. He's been an excellent defensive coordinator, and as a head coach, he did get a team to a Super Bowl, but they're most remembered for blowing a 28-3 lead. And, you would think a defensive guy, that wouldn't happen. Also, what happened last game that the Cowboys played, that they gave up 48 to the Packers, and it really could have been more. The Packers almost could have named the score the way that game was going. All right, more from Randy Mueller, former GM with the New Orleans Saints and the Miami Dolphins, talking to John Keim on his podcast. This is about the big decision that they have after they get the coach. They've made the first of three big ones in hiring Adam Peters as the general manager. Decision number 2 is the head coach, and decision number 3 is what to do with the number 2 pick. Mueller has no doubt that they're going to use it to take a quarterback. They're not going to trade down and load up on offensive linemen and things like that. No, they're going to draft a quarterback, he says, because, and this makes all the sense in the world, you got to say to yourself as an organization, look, this is a quarterback-heavy draft, and if things go right for us, we're not going to be drafting this high again. So between the 3 big names that you hear, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels won the Heisman at LSU, and Drake Maye, you take one of those guys. Here is the Mueller rankings of what he has seen so far. He's seen some of these guys in person and has looked at a lot of tape and what he sees in this quarterback draft.
For me, Caleb Williams is special. I don't know that I've seen a kid like him come out, and for that reason, in a long time, for that reason, I think the Bears are, once they gather the information and give it all due process, I'm imagining that's who they're going to pick. I am not a Drake Maye guy, so I'm not the right guy to throw bouquets that way. I just haven't seen anything that wows me, and I don't want to beat the kid up. He's been, for whatever reason, some people like him. That's just not my style. But I do like Jaden Daniels. I actually like J.J. McCarthy as well. And I think both of these guys will be in the mix for top 10 type selections when all the dust settles. So I think you could make a case for any of those 3 being picked in the top 6 or 8 picks, and no doubt. The Drake Maye one, maybe at some point I'll come around, but I've seen a lot of film and I'm still waiting to be impressed. I think a lot of times early in that evaluative process, the outsiders, the people not in NFL buildings, build up these players. And they take a liking to them in September, and come hell or high water, they're going to keep selling. They're going to keep pushing. And I'm just not buying that Kool-Aid until I actually get my eyes on them. And here's the other thing to keep in mind. Really, none of the coaches have even been heard yet.
Right.
And I find that history shows me once the coaches get involved as well, they tend to kind of line up with those of us that have done it for a living for a long time. And so I think there'll be a more clear consensus the further we get into this.
And one thing from yesterday, Mel Kiper put out his first mock draft, and he has the Commanders taking Jaden Daniels. And remember, these are evaluations that Mel puts out, not based on what he has seen on tape, although he watches a lot of tape. It's what he hears from people around the league. He talks to a lot of people, and he's getting the impression that the feeling, and I think Randy Mueller is representative of that there's some hesitation on Drake Maye there, that there would be a better opportunity with Jaden Daniels. And as for Caleb Williams, I don't know anything about the evaluation process. I couldn't tell you. I've seen him play. I think he's great, but I can't tell you how much better he is than anybody else. The one thing about him that would concern me, and particularly for this market, if they're interested in making a move up, we've seen 2 quarterbacks here taken in the first round whose careers didn't work out long term, and I think may have been somewhat related to the father influence. Certainly the RG3 disaster after that incredible rookie year was father-related. The father used to give interviews all the time, and he said to Channel 7, he said, "Show me a running quarterback, I'll show you a loser." Well, that's all the league is now, is running quarterbacks. So he thought that Mike Shanahan was trying to sabotage RG3's career so that he could play Kirk Cousins. So the dad influence was not good there. And then Dwayne Haskins, the late Dwayne Haskins, remember when he was drafted and he was drafted at number 15 by Washington. I'm not sure he would have gone in the first round if another team, or whether they passed on him, and the coaching staff didn't want him. That was a Dan Snyder move. Hopped off the yacht. Kid went to Bullis, same school his son went to, said, we got to take him. So they took him, and it was a mistake. But remember that there was going to be a company called Haskins & Haskins, father and son, and they had a draft party that night, the night he was drafted, at a bowling alley where they charged people to get in. The thing you hear about Caleb Williams, they haven't denied this. I haven't heard him say it specifically. I haven't heard the actual audio of him saying it, but there are reports that the dad has said to teams, if you draft him, we want to own a piece of the team, which is illegal. You can't do that in the NFL. And the other part that is reportedly out there is he doesn't want to play for the Bears. I don't like that either. So, in some ways, if Caleb Williams is not going to be available, it might be a good thing. And especially for here. It might work out. He might turn out to be a Hall of Famer in Chicago. Who knows? He might be that good. But here, I think with those kind of distractions that come with playing in your hometown and the dad influence, I would hesitate on him. Not that I wouldn't take him, but I would hesitate. Now, back to Mueller on what he sees with Drake Maye, why he doesn't think Washington should take him at number 2. And as for the comparisons that you may have heard between Drake Maye and Justin Herbert, this is what Randy Mueller says about that.
The size is what everybody sees. Everybody sees 6'4", 220 pounds, but I don't see elite arm like Herbert. I don't see elite anticipation or processing like Herbert. So there's some things that I don't think that's a good comparison. I see more of a little bigger Mac Jones. That's what I see. Somebody like that. I think his arm strength to me is ordinary for NFL levels. But the bigger thing to me is inconsistent accuracy and inconsistent timing within structure to anticipate throws. I struggle with that. I just haven't seen that.
He's not the be-all, end-all, but he's got a trained eye. He's been around the league a long time. And accuracy is such a big part of this. It's such a big part of playing quarterback in the NFL. And if you don't have the gun to gun it in there, then you're looking at touch and you're looking at timing and you're looking at accuracy. And if he's got issues with that, that could be something. Here, I don't know if this is necessarily an indictment because there have been other extenuating factors like the Vince Young flameout, who I saw play in what is the greatest sporting event I've ever seen live, the USC Texas National Championship game in 2006. Vince Young was spectacular. I thought he was going to be a superstar in the NFL. He wasn't. Now, maybe it's some on him, but that's a Mac Brown coach quarterback. We saw Sam Howell this year, a Mac Brown coach quarterback in college. Good, not great. And if Drake Maye is going to be great, that's another quarterback coach, by Mac Brown. Does that mean that he won't be great? No, it's just there are things that you have to look at. So I can imagine being in the room and having to make this decision and so much information to go through and so many conflicting opinions. What do you do? Well, that's why you hire a guy like Adam Peters, because that's his job, is to know this kind of stuff. And he's whiffed before as well. They have made some big mistakes, but they got Brock Purdy in the 7th round, and that spackled over a lot of stuff in San Francisco. Coming up, I have not said anything about what looks like the impending demise of Sports Illustrated, something that's been such a big part of my life. I've been a subscriber since 1970, and while it's not dead yet, it does seem to be on its deathbed, and it does not look good for the future. I'll have some thoughts on it. A lot of people have posted covers on their Twitter accounts. Peter King did an extensive part of his Football Morning in America column yesterday with favorite covers from people over the years. But he had a quote from Bob Costas about Sports Illustrated going under, which, as Costas is known to do, just a great way of wording things and capturing what SI has meant to so many of us over the years. And we'll get to that as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Sometimes the best signings in sports are the ones that you don't do. And, boy, Steven Strasburg was a disaster for the Nationals. Not his fault, not the organization's fault. But not to re-sign Anthony Rendon. Oh, my. Can you imagine if they were still saddled with him? And now, when Anthony Rendon, who's played all of 148 games over the last 3 years, is still due over $100 million in salary from the Angels, says about baseball and what others are saying about him, oy, Gavalt. We'll get to that at 10 o'clock. All right, you've heard about this. It came down on Friday afternoon, which is usually when news dump stories happen, but there was a story that Sports Illustrated had told all of its employees that basically they were getting fired, that some were going to stay for 90 days, some were going to go right away, and it had to do with the parent company's licensing agreement, and there was a payment of $3.5 million that was due. The payment was not made, and therefore it looked like the end of Sports Illustrated. Now, Pat Forty is a regular with Tony on his show, and Pat does great work for SI, still writes for them. The website is still up. They're still putting out content. They still have some of the best writers in the business. John Wertheim, who also does pieces for 60 Minutes, he writes for them. Tom Verducci, who I think is one of the best baseball writers in the business, he writes for them. They have some excellent people that are still there, but it has deteriorated quite a bit, and they've had various rounds of layoffs, as ESPN has had, but it's been really worse for them. And the magazine that was so much a part of my life growing up, my parents bought me a subscription for my 12th birthday, which would have been 1970. And over the years, I have maintained a subscription. I guess I don't have it anymore. It must have run out, and there wasn't any new offer. They used to send you those cards, first-time subscribers. Got a little bit of money off, so I used to put down my sister's names when I would renew the subscription, or the name of the cat or something like that. And then over the course of time, they had various deals, long-term, 3 years. You save some money. Internet deals were cheaper than if you subscribe with the postcard. Sometimes they gave you a sneaker or a sneaker phone, or they gave you a jacket, those kind of things that went along with it, the T-shirt. I have all that chazarai. But I've been a loyal subscriber because I love the magazine. I mean, not just the photos. And you have to remember that when I was growing up, we had a 13-inch black and white TV. So when you saw these beautiful color images of the games you would watch, Super Bowls, World Series, like, wow, look at that. Well, now I sit in my basement and I watch a 65-inch big screen TV, and the images are just as good as the photos there, and you get the photos on your phone. You can take your own. I mean, it's a whole different world than existed back in the heyday of Sports Illustrated, when it was one of the premier magazines in the country and had some of the best writers ever to do it. Most notably, Frank DeFord, who was a prolific author, not just for sports, but for other events. And they had, insiders like Paul Zimmerman on football. Peter King spent close to 30 years writing for the magazine, and he didn't start until the 80s. I'm talking about, back in when I was growing up. Gary Smith was an unbelievable writer, and they had the resources to put in the time to make these stories what they were, and they would fly these people all over the world to get what they needed for the stories. Well, it's a different world now. And what Peter King, in his Football Morning in America column, he reached out to a lot of different people from his era, journalists, and said, what's your favorite Sports Illustrated cover? And they would give you various ones. I don't have a particular favorite cover. Some of them are just, so unbelievable. Of course, the ones that involve the Redskins, with Darryl Grant on the cover when they beat the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game in '83. That's iconic. Here's one, and this was told to me by Kevin Greavy of the world champion Bullets in 1978. He said this was the thing he was looking forward to most after winning the championship, that he would be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. But that year, they had a Triple Crown winner, might have been affirmed in 1978, I think it was. Affirmed won the Triple Crown, and he said, I pick up the magazine on the Thursday after we win, and there's a damn horse on the cover, and you have to go inside to get the story of how the Bullets won their championship. That's how important it was to even players. Players, look forward to what was going to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. You'd kind of guess, each week and then there was the dreaded Sports Illustrated cover curse. Like you put a star athlete on there, and then the following season his career would go off a cliff, or he'd get hurt, or whatever. Or you'd put a team on there that was on the cusp of doing something great, like the Redskins winning a second straight Super Bowl against the Raiders, and it turned out to be Black Sunday. They got clobbered. But all that was so important to the culture. So in reaching out to various people, Peter King contacted Bob Costas. And Costas is one of the great wordsmiths that we've had in sports and maybe in any kind of media outlet. And he asked Costas about the significance of a Sports Illustrated cover. And this is what Costas said. A moment of victory. An individual's standing in sports wasn't really certified in its significance until Sports Illustrated said so. And then he referenced the iconic U.S. Olympic hockey team's victory over Russia in 1980. That seems to be the consensus pick for the best cover. There's no words on there. There's just the picture of the American flag in the background and the American players raising their sticks after the time ran out. Do you believe in miracles? Yes. There wasn't even the word miracle on the cover. It's just the photo. And that to me is representative of what Sports Illustrated was, because that's what it came out as in the beginning as. They didn't tout the writers. They touted the photography. More from Costas. In the days after that remarkable night, countless Americans celebrated it, talked about it, and waited to see how Sports Illustrated would capture and memorialize it. In this case, no caption, no words besides SI's logo, the pub date, and the newsstand price. That's it. You knew as soon as you saw it that for millions it would be a keepsake. And he said, no sports publication on any platform remotely approaches that sort of primacy and credibility today. And for a while now, neither had Sports Illustrated itself, despite the continuing quality of the writing. Same thing that's happened to Time and Newsweek in somewhat different ways. It's a significant loss and a reminder that the standards of quality and credibility that were the hallmarks of Sports Illustrated are no longer valued as they once were. And nobody could put it any better than that. But if you are of a certain age, and I'm in my 60s, you'd have to be at least in your 40s, maybe even a little bit older, to really understand how incredible it was to come home from school on a Thursday and hopefully the Sports Illustrated had come in the mail. And, my mom used to leave it out on the kitchen table, and I'd go through most of it in the first day. And certainly by the weekend, I'd have it finished. Even the faces in the crowd where, if you look back, you'd see names like Bill Walton and Tracy Austin and people who were, teenage prodigies who became great champions, and others who faded away, that they were great in high school and recognized for their accomplishments, but never made it to the next level, all those kind of things. I mean, it was just so much a part of the fabric of being a sports fan, Sports Illustrated. And yes, I mean, I can understand in today's world how it's not a necessity. It's just not. It's not something that we need when you can get these kind of things on your phone and on the websites. And, their website is still pretty good. I imagine that goes away. The printing of the magazine, that is slowly faded away. It went from being a weekly to a bi-weekly, and now I don't even know if it's a monthly anymore. It might be like 4 or 5 times a year. I think they're still going to put out the swimsuit edition because that always sells. But by and large, it's outlived its usefulness, but it was such a big part of my life and maybe a part of yours. And we cannot have the passing of Sports Illustrated without recognizing what it was and how important it was to so many of us. All right, we got a Tony show coming up at 11 o'clock. Mike Callow will be filling in there. Also, later this hour, we'll take a look at the Hall of Fame vote tonight. We're going to find out who makes the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's an announcement, I guess, on the MLB Network. And everything gets televised live these days. I think it's 8 o'clock or something like that. We'll find out who gets in. Also want to comment on a comment that Anthony Rendon made the other day, and some football to talk about before we get to the Joe Namath interview with Joe Buck. Joe Namath is 80 years old now. You think if you're older, you think of Joe Namath as the young counterculture quarterback. You had the perfect contrast. Yeah, contrast is the word. The perfect contrast in Super Bowl III, where you had Johnny Unitas and the high black top cleats and the crew cut. He didn't start the game. He finished the game and was Joe Namath's idol growing up in Pennsylvania. And Joe Namath, who had the Fu Manchu and the long hair and the white cleats, it was a time in America where those two types of cultures were clashing. And Namath came out on top in that game, and now he's 80 years old, and he does advertisements for Social Security supplements and things like that. But he's still got great things to say, and we'll hear his comments with Joe Buck coming up in just a bit. A couple of baseball things. Anthony Rendon. Now, take nothing away from what he did for the Nationals in 2019. He was a big part of their World Series championship. And he had made it pretty clear during the season that he wasn't going to re-sign here. I was among those who wanted him back. I thought, wow, that's a cornerstone piece there. He's a power hitter. He hits for average. He's a good fielder. Why wouldn't you want this guy back? And I don't think he ever gave them a chance. I don't think he ever was in the bidding with Washington. Winds up playing on a 7-year, $245 million contract with the Angels. And of that, he's still due about $100 million. And he doesn't play. Last 3 years, he's played 148 games. Last year, he played 43, hit .236, missed time with injuries and due to a suspension for physically confronting a fan who was heckling him. And things have gone downhill for him. And he was on a show called the Jack Vita Show, which I'm not familiar with. Must be a talk show in the L.A. area. And he complained about the season being too long. He said, when he was asked about what he would change in baseball, Rendon said, the season. He said, we got to shorten the season, man. There's too many dang games, 162 games and 185 days or whatever it is. Man, no, we got to shorten this bad boy up. Well, it's been 162 since they went from 154 during the 1961 season, which was many, many years before Anthony Rendon was born. And I don't think there's going to be a move to change the length of the season anytime soon. I don't think it'd be a terrible idea. I think 162 is too long, but it's part of baseball tradition and the numbers and so forth. On top of that, Jonathan Papelbon. Now, you may remember him best for choking Bryce Harper, but there were many on the roster, as I understand it, who understood what Papelbon was doing. They were kind of tired of Bryce Harper's act. Papelbon called out the work ethic of Rendon and claimed that he hates baseball. Well, if he hates it, he should leave and leave the $100 million behind. He can retire anytime he wants to. But he's collecting the cash, so he's hypocritical in this. And if I, even if it's not his fault that he's had these injuries, if you haven't been out on the field for even 60 games in a season, how can you complain about 162? Cal Ripken was there every single day. Cal Ripken blew past the Lou Gehrig record, which many thought was unbreakable, 2,130, and I think he got to 2,262 or something like that. I mean, it's just remarkable that he would have the chutzpah to say that. But he always did sort of give off a scent like, yeah, I mean, I'm good at this and I'm going to continue to play. He was talking about not playing for a long time when he was here, but he still signed that 7-year contract with the Angels, and he doesn't play. And I was never even good enough to try out for my high school team, but I did spend a lot of time around minor league baseball and got to know guys who would give anything just for a day in the major leagues. And here's a guy who has the talent, and he's throwing it away. And he's whining about playing too many games when he doesn't play any and still makes this kind of money, and he's always hurt. Maybe if he kept himself in a little bit better shape, maybe he wouldn't be hurt as much. I don't know. But, man, that is just really, really bad. And that must really rankle so many guys who are in the minors. Say, well, if you don't like it, get out. Give me a chance to get up there. I'm sure there's some really good third baseman in the Angels chain who can't get up there because, they can't do anything with Rendon. They don't want him anymore, I'm sure, but you can't trade him with that contract. So, come on. That really is sickening when you hear something like that. And it's, you look at Anthony Rendon and you go, phew. Good thing they didn't sign him. Might be stuck with Strasburg and Rendon, neither one who plays, and at least, Strasburg has given it an attempt But in this case, that's not that's awful. Also in the Baseball Hall of Fame, we're going to find out tonight who gets in. You know that it's 75% of the ballots. There's like 400 writers who vote on this. Not all of them turn in ballots, but it's essentially 400 votes that are out there. And in total, there are 12 new candidates this year, 14 holdovers who've been named on previous ballots. It's almost certain that Adrian Beltre will get in. Played 21 years in the majors, 5 Gold Gloves, 4 All-Star appearances, 3,000 hits, 477 home runs. So 3,000 hits, you're pretty much an automatic and close to 500. Adrian Beltre gets in for sure. Joe Mauer is expected to get in. 15-year career with the Minnesota Twins, 3 consecutive Golden Glove awards, American League MVP in 2009, was forced to stop catching after he had too many concussions, and the Twins have retired his jersey. You know, the thing about Joe Mauer, I don't know if you remember this, but when he was coming out of high school in Minnesota, he's a local kid, he was the #1 quarterback recruit in the country, as well as being the #1 baseball recruit and the #1 pick of the draft. And he decided that he was going to go play baseball for his hometown team, which he did for 15 years. And he was honored in 2019 when they retired his #7 jersey. And then there's Billy Wagner, who did make 7 All-Star appearances, pitched 16 years as a relief pitcher. You know, I could see Beltre for sure. Mauer, maybe. To me, Billy Wagner doesn't feel like a Hall of Famer. And then there's also a chance that we'll see Todd Helton get in this year. Spent his entire career with the Colorado Rockies. That's probably why he's not really thought of by many as a Hall of Famer. 5 All-Star appearances, 3 Gold Gloves, 4 Silver Sluggers, 369 homers, batting average of .316. Todd Helton, by the way, was the starting quarterback at the University of Tennessee when he was unseated by a freshman by the name of Peyton Manning. So, you know, these guys are athletes, all these guys. They just don't feel like Hall of Famers to me. Gary Sheffield, last year on the ballot, he's going to have a big jump, and Sheffield has been associated with Barry Bonds and the Mitchell Report and things like that. So I don't think he's going to get in. He may have Hall of Fame numbers, but he's not going to make it. The only one we know for sure is Jim Leland, who has already been selected by what they call, it's not the Veterans Committee, they call it the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee. And he managed for 22 years and won 6 division titles, 3 in the National League, 3 in the American League, and won a World Series with the Marlins. So he would get in. 1997, they beat the Yankees for the World Series. So he's getting in. But, you know, it's so bizarre for me for the Hall of Fame in that if you were to list some of the greatest players who ever played, they would include Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. But there's a great divide on whether they should get in. And it's, you know, people who love baseball, like Tim Kirkjian is one who says, put him in. Put them in. We don't know what anybody was using at the time, so I'm not going to leave them out. You got to put those guys in. They're Hall of Famers. Others who have Hall of Fame votes, like my friend Tom Lavero, says absolutely not. They violated the rules. They cheated. They shouldn't go in. So there's that. But I think that when you look at the Hall of Fame and the guys who are in, there are arguments to be made for many of them, either for or against. There are some who are in who shouldn't be in, and others who are not in and probably should be in. And maybe that's what keeps the interest up so high. I don't know. But I don't think it's going to be a huge celebration across the country when you hear names like Adrian Beltre, Billy Wagner, and Joe Mauer announced for the Hall of Fame. It's not like, you know, well, I was too young, wasn't born yet when Babe Ruth went in, but that kind of level of well-known superstar. And I never really thought of those guys as superstars in the way that I thought of my childhood heroes like Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and people like that. All right, let's do some football here. Steve Young, I played some of his conversation that he had with Brock Purdy last week, and very interesting. Purdy, very religious. So he has a calmness on the field about, like, this isn't really in my hands. It's in God's hands. I'm going to do the best I can, but I really can't control the outcome that much other than doing the best I can. It was real interesting about how he's been able to keep his calm and stay cool out on the field. I would say this, though. about the 4 quarterbacks that are left playing for the Super Bowl at this point. If you had a draft, you might take Brock Purdy last from them. You'd take Patrick Mahomes either first or second because of his Super Bowls. Lamar Jackson's going to be the MVP of the league this year. Jared Goff has at least taken a team to a Super Bowl before. Brock Purdy, yeah, he was in the conversation for most valuable player this year. That's not going to happen. That's going to go to Lamar Jackson. But he doesn't have flash, for sure. He's some say he's a game manager. Well, he's managed them to the NFC Championship game at home. So that's pretty damn good. Also, this analysis from Steve Young after watching him play last week, after watching him win that game, this is what Young has said. He said this yesterday on the Rich Eisen show about what he's seen from Brock Purdy.
You might be able to make the case that there hasn't been a more efficient quarterback in the history of the game, in how he played this year. For example, one of the stats that just was the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life is that the 49ers lead the league in yards per attempt if you just took the passes from the line of scrimmage or behind. Rich.
Yeah.
Those are 100% completion percentage, almost.
Yeah.
With zero risk or with very low risk, you're leading the league in yards per attempt against everybody else in the league. And that just goes to show the innovation. What we haven't talked about is the innovation that that there are maybe, I'm going to say under 10 of the innovative minds that are out there calling plays and coming up with new ways to attack these open spaces in the NFL that have showed up maybe 5-6 years ago with the rule changes. And one of them, the most amazing innovative minds is Kyle Shanahan.
Well, I mean, in that respect, though, Steve, I mean, the end of the first half was a head scratcher with what they were doing with the play clock. It honestly looked like they were trying to play for a long field goal that was going to get blocked. I mean, it was one of those horror movies where you could sort of see it coming with your hands over your face. And then Purdy, he did turn it on in that last drive. There's no question about it.
What happened? He became Mr. Efficient. The ball came out. They made the completions. They made the plays. He did everything that you would want a Super Bowl quarterback to do in the key moments. And he's young. It's amazing. There's going to be a movie about him. There's going to have to be a movie about him at some point. And I've interviewed him and know him, and he's just a fascinating human being. And again, I think he's one of the best in the league, and he does it in his own Brock Purdy way. And I've said for over a year, let Brock cook. Like, give him a play, let him figure it out, and he will figure it out. He's got a special mind that can figure stuff out.
So you don't come out of that game against the Packers concerned at all? This has nothing to do with Debo's. Has nothing to do with Debo's health.
Because there were so many passes that you're like, what? Like, it was a confusing watch, and it was an unnerving watch, because of the first time you thought, well, wait, hold on. I thought he was Superman in his own way. And all of a sudden there's just weird stuff happening. Balls coming out. They weren't even close. And then you got thinking about, he's wiping his hand as he's dropping back. Like, is there a rain thing? Is there because we're getting, him. We don't know him. And is there somehow a wet ball? Some guys just, look, there's guys I play with just didn't like the wet ball, and who loves it? Nobody. But, then you got thinking, well, is that the kryptonite? And then, then also just they've been off for 3 weeks. I mean, Brock had not played in 21 days. That's an eternity. That's a hard restart for a quarterback, I believe, to be gone off of that competitive edge that you have to have week to week. So anyway, there's a lot of things to try to explain it, but it was unnerving, and the 49ers were beat. I think they sensed it. There's a huge size. I don't know how you can make huge bigger than huge, but like a massive, huge, enormous nuclear sigh of relief that happened when they got that last drive done. Because if that would have ended right there with that talent and all the people they put together, that would have been somewhat criminal.
Wow. So he's saying that would have wasted one of the great teams he's seen recently from the 49ers. He was certainly on some of them, won a Super Bowl with them. The Jordan Love interception there, killed any chance of a Green Bay comeback at that point. And, yeah, Purdy didn't play as well as he has, but they found a way to win. And they found a way to win without Deebo Samuel, who missed most of that game. It's uncertain if he's going to be able to go in this week's game against Detroit. They may not need him. But some of the things that Young talked about involved the rust that he had to shake off, not playing for 3 weeks. I think we saw that with Lamar Jackson of the Ravens. So that kind of stuff is going to happen. And I think the Lions coming in nice and loose. They got, talk about playing with house money. Certainly nobody expected them to get this far. And the 49ers, if you listen to what Young says, based on the talent they've got and how good they played this year, they may come in a little tight. So that could be something to watch for on Sunday. If you missed this, Patrick Mahomes' post-game speech, which I guess is going to be part of the NFL Films treatment, whatever kind of NFL Films thing they put out this week, he did a speech to his teammates after they won in Buffalo. And his some of the quotes are, "They asked for it. They got what they asked for." But Travis Kelce said it. "This S ain't done. We come back next week ready to go." And, we heard all about, how it was going to be different this time for Mahomes because he had to play on the road. Didn't really seem to bother him. He seemed to really thrive with the fans booing him and throwing snowballs at him and things like that. There are going to be snowballs this week. Weather looks pretty good as they play in Baltimore on Sunday, and the Chiefs being underdogs is interesting. I mean, the Ravens are good. They may be the best Ravens team they've ever had, including the 2 Super Bowl teams. But the experience that Kansas City has, the experience that showed when they needed it in Buffalo last week, that's going to be an X factor. This could be just a spectacular game, just a great game that's going to be played on Sunday. Both games look good, but this one in particular really shapes up as a terrific matchup. All right, we got Tony's show coming up next. Mike Callow from here on out will be doing the fill-in for Tony when he's out. Tony will have a show tomorrow, as will I. I'll have my show starting at 9 a.m., and I'll see you right back here right at that time. Have a good day.